The comment came while we were all having dessert at my cousin's engagement party, the kind of moment when people's filters fall off. Champagne's been flowing, small talk turns personal, and someone always says something they shouldn't. That someone was my Aunt Carol, seated at the head of the long, candlelit table, still wearing that smug little smile she saves for moments when she thinks she's being profound. She raised her glass, looked around the room like she was about to give a TED Talk, and said, "Business acumen is inherited. You either have the instinct or you don't. Poor people just don't get it. They've never seen real money. They think small because they are small." The table laughed. I wish I could say they were just being polite, but no. They genuinely agreed. Uncle James even nodded like Carol had just solved the meaning of life. My cousin Brittany leaned in like she was hearing gospel. The servers kept clearing plates quietly like they weren't the very people she just casually insulted. Then came the punchline. Carol turned to me, still holding her champagne. "Take Emma, for example," she said, as if I wasn't sitting 2 feet away. "Sweet girl, works really hard at her little retail job, but she could never run a business. She just doesn't understand how money works." The laughter doubled. No venom, just cold certainty. I wasn't offended. Not really. It wasn't even personal to them. They genuinely believed this was how the world worked. I smiled, smoothed down the wrinkles in my department store dress, took another bite of cake, and I said, sweet as honey, "You're absolutely right, Aunt Carol. I wouldn't even know where to begin with business strategy." More laughter. Someone clapped. In their minds, I had accepted my station in life. I was harmless and humble, just how they liked me. And that was the moment I made up my mind. But before I go any further, if you've ever been underestimated, judged by your job title, or told you'd never make it because of your background, I want you to do 3 things right now. Tap the like button so more people hear stories like this. Subscribe to True Voice Revealed so you don't miss how this one unfolds. And swap a comment. What's the worst thing someone's ever assumed about you? Let's get real. And now, back to the story. After dessert, I excused myself, went to the restroom, locked the stall, and pulled out my phone. Not to cry, but to check my accounts. On my screen was a folder labeled Family Investments. Carol's Luxury Resorts. $47 million invested through Pinnacle Holdings, LLC. Uncle James Tech Consulting Firm. $23 million through Strategic Growth Partners. Brittany's Fashion Line. $18 million via Meridian Capital Group. And 14 other family-run businesses. Total capital invested, $250 million. They thought I couldn't run a business. Meanwhile, I was the anonymous investor who made their empires possible. See, 8 years ago, I inherited $50 million from my grandmother. Not Carol's mom, but my mom's. She left it to me because I was the only one in the family who ever visited her when she got sick. The others sent flowers. I brought soup and sat with her. Before she passed, she said, "Use this money to become who they can't see yet." So I did. I didn't flash it. I didn't buy a penthouse or a Mercedes. I studied. I invested. I started working with Blackstone Private Wealth, and slowly, smartly, I grew that money into something real. Now my net worth sits at $640 million. Annual passive income? Around $89 million. And assets under management, over $1.3 billion. And every time one of my relatives needed capital for a new venture, I made it happen. Through shell companies. Anonymously. I wanted to see how they treated people when they thought you had nothing to offer them. Spoiler, it wasn't pretty. They bragged about being self-made. They mocked people in service roles. They treated minimum wage earners like invisible background noise. They toasted themselves for being born leaders. But they never knew who was really holding the foundation up. Until now. Because that night, I decided it was time to stop playing the fool. The next morning, I called my wealth manager, Diana. I liquidate every investment connected to the family, all 17 businesses, immediate withdrawal. She paused. "That's $250 million, Emma. You sure? The shock will be catastrophic." "I'm sure. It's not about business anymore." What should I tell them when they start calling? I smiled. Tell them their minimum wage niece had a change of heart. That same day, the storm started. Carol's company was the first to call, then James, then Brittany. 8 voicemails by 3 p.m. They were confused, nervous, still polite. They thought the investors were just being difficult. By 5 p.m., they weren't polite anymore, they were panicked. But I didn't answer, because for once, they'd have to figure it out without the poor girl who didn't understand money. And I wasn't done yet. I watched the missed calls stack up on my phone like falling dominoes. Carol, James, Brittany, one after another. Each voicemail more frantic than the last. My favorite was James trying to explain the concept of investor relations to me, assuming my retail job gave me some experience with difficult customers. I mean, the irony practically screamed through the speaker. By the time the doorbell rang at 4:30 p.m., I'd already brewed a fresh cup of coffee and tidied the living room. Something told me they'd come in person. Pride wounded, fortunes crumbling, hoping that the poor cousin they'd looked down on might magically know what to do. I opened the door, and there they were. Carol, James, and our cousin Michael. They looked wrecked, like they'd aged 5 years in 48 hours. Gone were the designer smiles and business bravado. In their place, fear, desperation, and a hint of regret. Carol barreled in first. "Emma, thank God you're home," she said, brushing past me like this was her house. "We've been trying to reach you all day." James and Michael trailed behind, glancing around my modest apartment like they'd never seen secondhand furniture before. Funny how humility always shows up once wealth starts walking away. "What's going on?" I asked, calm as ever, motioning them to sit down. Carol collapsed on the couch, visibly trembling. "Emma, all of our major investors pulled out today. All of them. It's like a coordinated attack. We've lost $250 million in backing. Just gone." James added, "Without that funding, we can't make payroll next month. Contracts are collapsing, the banks are circling, we're sinking." Michael leaned in. "Emma, we need your help. Not financially, we know you can't, but maybe you could help us deal with the investors. You work with customers, maybe you understand how to talk to these people." I almost laughed. These were the same people who'd once laughed at my little retail job, and now they wanted negotiation tips. But I held back. I wasn't here for revenge. I was here for clarity. "What makes you think the investors are being difficult?" Carol's voice cracked. "They're demanding immediate repayment, full withdrawal with no warning. That's not how investing works. Someone must be behind this. Someone with an agenda." I tilted my head, pretending to think. Why would anyone want to sabotage your businesses? "We don't know, James. Maybe a competitor. Maybe someone jealous of our success." Michael added, "Or someone who thinks we don't deserve it." I looked at them, 3 grown adults panicking not because their business acumen failed, but because their blind spots had caught up to them.
"What were you talking about at the engagement party?" I asked. "Anything that might have rubbed someone the wrong way?" Carol shifted uncomfortably. "Just family talk, entrepreneurship, business instincts." "Any comments about people not being smart enough for business?" Silence. James finally admitted. Carol might have said something about how poor people don't understand capital strategy, that some folks should stay in service roles. I nodded slowly, letting it hang. I stood and walked to my small desk, opened my laptop, and brought up my portfolio dashboard. Without a word, I turned the screen toward them. Carol leaned forward first, her breath caught in her throat. Net worth, $640 million. Assets under management, $1.3 billion. Recent transactions, $250 million in liquidations. Accounts affected, Carol's Luxury Resorts, James's Tech Consulting, Brittany's Fashion Line. James was next to read the numbers, then Michael. Their eyes darted from line to line, connecting the dots. "You are the investor," Carol whispered. "Pinnacle Holdings, Meridian Capital, Strategic Growth Partners. That was you?" I nodded. "Shell companies I created. I've been funding your businesses for years, anonymously." James ran a hand through his hair and stood up. "You've been sitting on this money the whole time while you were mocking me at dinner tables, yes. While you were assuming I couldn't understand business because I didn't flaunt wealth." Carol looked devastated. "But why? Why would you invest in us without telling us?" I sat down again and sipped my coffee. "I wanted to know who you were, who all of you were, when you thought I had nothing to offer, when you believed I had no power." Michael stared at the screen. "You were testing us?" "No, I was observing you." Carol's face fell into her hands. "So now you're punishing us for how we treated you?" I shook my head. "I'm not punishing you. I'm withdrawing my support. There's a difference." James was pacing now. "Emma, you said at the party you didn't even know where to begin with business. Was that sarcasm?" "No," I answered honestly. "I meant I didn't know where to begin with your kind of business, the kind built on appearances and inherited privilege, not insight or empathy." The room went still. Eventually, Carol looked up again, her voice small. "What happens to us now? Our companies, our employees?" "It depends," I said, "on what you've learned." She wiped her eyes. "I've learned that pride is expensive, that underestimating someone because of their job or income is a dangerous mistake." James added, "And that business success isn't always earned. Sometimes it's gifted, and it should be respected." I opened a new document on my laptop. "I might be willing to reinvest under new terms, but not because I feel bad, because I believe people can change, even you." Carol sat in stunned silence as I pulled up the reinvestment terms on my laptop. "I'm willing to fund you again," I said carefully, "but this time it won't be in the shadows. There will be terms, and they won't just be financial." She nodded slowly. "We'll do anything, just help us survive this, please." James leaned in. "What kind of terms?" I looked them each in the eye, not with anger, not even satisfaction, just the quiet certainty of someone who'd held her tongue long enough. "First," I said, "you acknowledge publicly that your businesses were built with anonymous family funding, not investor brilliance, not self-made grit. Just me, quietly watching while you bragged about bootstraps you never wore." Michael swallowed hard. "Publicly?" "Publicly," I repeated. "Press releases, website bios, social media. I want the truth out there." They all nodded. "Second," I continued, "you publicly apologize for what you said at the engagement party, not just to me, but to every hardworking person who's ever been looked down on because of a name badge or an hourly wage." Carol's lips trembled. "I said those things because I believed them, but I don't anymore." "That's why this matters," I replied gently. "People change, but only if they admit they were wrong." She lowered her head. "Agreed." "Third, you overhaul how your companies treat employees. No more elitist hiring practices. No more culture fit excuses to exclude talented people from working class backgrounds. Transparent wages, career development programs, and promotions based on skill, not family brunch invitations." James muttered, "This is going to cost us a fortune. It'll earn you more. Long-term loyalty, better performance, real innovation, the things you pretended were your strengths." He nodded reluctantly. And last, I said, you stop pretending to be self-made starting today. I want a full transition of your investor communications to acknowledge family-based support and a clear note of gratitude for that support. Michael looked down, shoulders heavy. You're asking us to expose our pride. No, I'm giving you a chance to replace it with truth. I passed them each a printed agreement outlining the terms. $200 million in reinvestment across all ventures, structured openly as family capital. Oversight included, audits required, and any misrepresentation of the source of funds would terminate the agreement permanently. They all signed. And then something happened I didn't expect. Carol stood up, walked over to me, and hugged me. No words, just a quiet, trembling thank you. For the funding, sure, but also for holding a mirror up to everything she never wanted to see. James muttered, "You're not who I thought you were." I never was. You just weren't looking. The next few weeks were full of headlines and whispers. The stories came out like peeling bandages. A family dynasty built not on business brilliance, but on a single, quiet woman they'd all ignored, me. But instead of collapsing, the businesses adapted. The truth didn't destroy them, it made them better. Policies changed, work culture shifted, entry-level staff started speaking up in meetings. Promotions stopped looking like popularity contests. For the first time, everyone in the company mattered. And slowly, something strange happened. People respected them more. Not because they were rich, but because they were growing. 6 months later, we gathered again for another family event. This time, my cousin's baby shower. No engagement party glamour, no luxury venue, just a rented hall, folding chairs, and a buffet line. Carol stood to speak. Her voice was steady. I want to acknowledge that for too long, our family celebrated wealth without recognizing where it came from. We believed success was about instinct, not opportunity. That money made you smart. We were wrong. She raised her glass toward me, to Emma, the woman we overlooked, who quietly funded our futures, who reminded us that the difference between power and wisdom is how you treat people when you think they can't help you. The room clapped. Some even stood. And for once, the applause didn't feel fake. I nodded my thanks, but I didn't smile for attention. I smiled because for the first time, I felt seen. And that was worth more than all the contracts they'd ever signed. Some people believe money defines your intelligence. Others believe your salary defines your status. But respect, real lasting respect, comes from how you treat people when no one's watching. So if this story hits you somewhere deep, if you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or silenced because of your job, your income, or your background, like this video. It helps more people see stories like this. Subscribe to True Voice Revealed. We're telling real, powerful stories every week. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that value has nothing to do with your paycheck. And drop a comment below. What lesson stood out to you? Have you ever been underestimated? Let's talk about it. Let's rewrite the script on what success really means.